Last week I ran across a quotation that spoke to me. It was written by Dame Freya Madeline Stark, famous author and world explorer, particularly in the Middle East. This is what she said. Christmas is not an external event at all, but a piece of one's home that they carry in their heart for their entire life. What she said is true, isn't it? Most of us carry memories of both home and Christmas in our hearts. And we carry those memories for our entire lives. When I began sketching my Advent messages about 4 months ago, I would never have guessed that I would be delivering this particular message about the quest for home on the backside of an emergency trip to Springfield, Missouri to care for my parents. I've made that journey to Springfield nearly every 10 weeks or so for the last 3 years because Mom and Dad's health has been in decline. Now, the decline is accelerating. At 88 years of age, Mom's dementia is slowly but ever so surely eroding the person that I have always known and she has always been. Every day, she journeys deeper to a place that seems further and further away. Her severe hearing loss, combined with her inability to process her thoughts and formulate words, leaves her frustrated, as well as my father. She's confused. She's afraid. Her condition will not get better. As a result of a fall 10 days ago, my 90-year-old father is now in rehabilitation in the room right next door to my mother in her nursing care unit. On the grand scheme of things, Dad is not much better than Mom, but he thinks he is. In the care conference with the medical professionals the other day, they said to me, he is viciously independent, which is good news and bad news at the same time. And I said, and the surprise is? The journey to Springfield was like hitting the play button of movies that are stored away in the memory, my memory. Those movies were playing all the way there and all the way home. I saw my grandmother Hundley and her decline in my father, just as I could see my grandfather Slankard in my mother. In fact, watching my mother was like a replay of my great-grandmother who had Alzheimer's before they had a name for Alzheimer's. During my 4-month sabbatical this summer, I did a lot of writing. The two people that I shared my writing with were my wife and my spiritual director. Both of them made the same observation. They said, you're spending an awful lot of time reflecting about the early years of your life. What do those memories have to do about leadership, which is what you're supposed to be writing about? Well, I said, those experiences influence who I am. It's what I've become. It's how I was shaped. I need to try to make sense of those memories. My answer didn't satisfy my spiritual director. He wanted me to dig deeper. He suggested that I consider home as a metaphor. What does it mean for you to be home spiritually? He would ask over and over and over again. How do the memories of home influence your spiritual practice in your life right now? Well, I haven't been able to answer his questions yet, but I'm working on it. It's part of my spiritual journey. Now, here's the connection between my journey and the text that I read a moment ago from Luke 1. I think I have studied the Magnificat musically and textually for at least 35 years. But this year, I saw something in the story that I have never seen before. It was one phrase that I don't know as I've ever read. And if I've read it, I haven't paid any attention to it. Listen to the phrase again. It was right after Mary finished her singing. Mary stayed with Elizabeth about 3 months. And then she returned to her home. She returned to her home. Isn't that interesting? It's made me wonder how home influenced Mary's spiritual practice to be able to endure what she endured. I think every Advent season we recite or sing the Song of Mary. Theologians have studied Mary's song ever so carefully. They almost interpret it as though it's a theological dissertation. There are, after all, only 4 times in the Gospels where it's recorded the mother of Jesus spoke. And 3 of the 4 are in the first 2 chapters of Luke. Some believe that Mary's song was a protest song, a justice song, that declared that the powerful and the rich will exchange places with the powerless and the poor. The text, the way it's phrased, makes it almost sound as though her prophecy was already coming to pass. And yet here we are, 21 centuries later, and Mary's song still has not been realized. While the Magnificat is an expression of Mary's gratitude for being the recipient of God's favor, she just must have felt a considerable amount of anxiety and fear and apprehension. How could she not have felt those things? But notice Luke's postscript to her song. Mary needed to leave home in order to find home. Apparently, she traveled to Elizabeth's home in order to find her spiritual center, to be able to be at home within herself so that she could face what she needed to face. And once she found that peaceful place within her spirit, she was able to go back home. I wonder how many of us can relate to that journey from being at home and leaving home and then going back home a different person. Both Mary and Joseph were from Nazareth, and according to apocryphal writings, Mary was the daughter of Joachim and Anne. Mary's father, by tradition, was a priest who served the spiritual needs of that little village. If you do some reading about Mary and her family, you would discover some surprising insights from a variety of historical sources, including the Quran. Yet in reality, we know very little about Mary or her parents. No doubt Mary was raised a devout Jew. She probably knew all of the faith stories from synagogue school. She probably practiced prayer and worship based on the example of her father and her mother. And yet there's so much we don't know. We don't know if Mary told her parents of the angel's visitation. We don't know if her parents might have sent her away to Elizabeth when there was suspicion of pregnancy. We don't know if they sent for her to return home or how they welcomed her back when she returned. We don't know how the community responded to Mary or Joseph or her family. We don't know how each member of that family endured the gossip chain that must have been rampant in that little village. But when we ponder those thoughts, we might conclude, just might conclude, that the Holy Family struggled to make sense of their circumstances, just like you and I sometimes struggle to make sense of ours. Maybe therein lies our hope. You see, for the person of faith, Advent is our annual pilgrimage to Bethlehem. The journey is as important as the destination. I wonder what you're discovering about yourself this Advent. What are you discovering about God? Bethlehem is just a short distance away now. We're almost home. So from a pastoral perspective, my prayer for you is that Christ will be born anew within us this holy season. And may the result of that birth help us all to know God's welcome, God's love, and God's acceptance. Because you see, in God, we are home. Thanks be to God. Amen. Thank you for being with us this morning in worship. And if you look at your clock, you know what I just did? I just spared you 15 minutes of shopping. Thank you to all of the musicians and the readers. It's been a wonderful time together, and may you go into your day with a renewed sense of God's presence in your life and eager and ready to take on what is before you. If you cannot be with us tomorrow, I will wish you a Merry Christmas. If you can be with us tomorrow, you'll get it tomorrow too. But tomorrow night at 5, 7, and 9 with Casey's breakfast. Tomorrow morning at 8, all the guests will be coming. So those of you who are scheduled to help, please keep that in mind. And then next Sunday at 10 a.m., one service. God bless you. Have a great day.